This edition of Nation Talk is being brought to you by Scotiabank. Respecting your past, trusting your future. Think what we can achieve together.
Hello, today we are speaking with Irving Leblanc, who is the Director of Housing and Infrastructure and Emergency Services at the Assembly of First Nations. P.Eng, welcome to Nation Talk.
Thank you.
P.Eng, why is the AFN convening this event, and what is your role in it?
Well, my role is I hold a file on emergency services, which is one of the large areas within my portfolio that I manage. It's an interesting portfolio because it's basically unfunded. We have no funding currently to manage this file, so I'm handling it within my housing and infrastructure file. But through that, we've been able to pull this emergency forum, put it together, time that it's really needed to bring this together. The objective is to bring in all of the players, as many of the players that can get into one area. Anybody that's involved with First Nations emergency management. And that includes the federal family. And they're quite a large group of them. Supporting organizations like Canadian Red Cross, Save the Children. We have a new player, Kidik Canada, the fire extinguisher and smoke detector group that is now working with youth in the West Coast. So we've brought in a variety of players, but they're all related. And I think it's very timely and apt because of many emergency events that are happening. And as we know, climate change is really starting to impact First Nations. We all know that climate change is real and that we've already seen impacts of that. We've seen that in 2011 with the big floods. We saw that in 2013 with the Alberta flood. And then we're continuing seeing major events. We have a tornado in Long Point First Nation. A huge number of houses were destroyed. So it's all about preparedness, being prepared, and also all about resiliency. And it's also following up on the United Nations disaster risk reduction approach, push that they're doing for being resilient around the world. We're part of that, and we're playing a big part of it, especially here in Canada, and getting the recognition from the major federal departments, Public Safety Canada, Transport Canada, and Indigenous Affairs. So all of these players are playing a big role in being here. And we really appreciate that they came out and saw the importance of this meeting. It is going to be the first annual First Nations Emergency Management Forum, and certainly look forward to having more in the future.
What are some of the key issues being discussed, and do you have any First Nation examples of solutions that are pointing the way forward?
Absolutely. So we've seen the effects of recent floods and an issue that there's got to be a faster response from the government, a lot more flexibility. For example, the 2011 floods in Manitoba, it's now 2017. First, the members from those communities have been out of their homes for over 6 years. There has to be something much better, more responsive to that. And a lot of that is now being seen to be First Nations-led response and recovery. So rather than waiting for the provinces to come and respond, First Nations are starting to look at First Nations-led institutions so they can be the first responders, and they are more adaptable to that. They know their members, they know what their members want. So that is one facet of the response and recovery side. The other part is being ready, is taking on the training and communications and awareness, being led by First Nations, bringing in the cultural competency, which is very important.
Anything surprising or notable at the event?
I think the length and breadth of all the players that are involved. I didn't myself fully understand how many federal departments are involved in emergency one way or another, from Coast Guard to emergency responders to Transport Canada, which is involved in derailments. And we've had some numerous derailments in First Nations, and it brings in the contamination, the environment, the impact on the environment. How those huge derailments and release of contaminants have impacted groundwater and water supplies for First Nations. So it's I guess it should not be a surprise, but once you look at the size of the picture, it opens your eyes to who's all involved. And there's numerous resources divvied out to all those departments, and sometimes one area doesn't know what the other area is doing. And even First Nations, they don't know what's available in those many departments. So I think this forum has been successful in making those connections so that First Nations now begin to see the web, I guess, of emergency management in First Nations.
So I imagine there's going to be a part 2 for this forum. Any closing thoughts, P.Eng?
Well, definitely we want to still working on National Chiefs Harry Bellegarde's meeting with Minister of Public Safety, Ralph Goodale, back in May, where we identified several requirements for First Nations to be included in this, and that's being part of the federal, provincial, territorial group that is responsible for emergency management. We want to be sitting at that table, not receiving work that's been done by them. So we want to be full partners in that. We also want to be seen as being able to have the capacity to be able to respond ourselves. And also one other concern that we have are the bilateral agreements that Indian Affairs and Indigenous Affairs have made with the province without our involvement. Call them bilateral agreements. They're agreements between the provinces and the federal government on how to respond. But for the most part, we have not been at the table, but we are the ones that are impacted. And from this point on, we are demanding that we be at that table and truly form tripartite agreements, or even go beyond that to bilateral agreements between the First Nations and the federal government. So that's our ultimate goal.
Nothing done for us without us. Thanks for joining Nation Talk, man.
Thank you very much.
This edition of Nation Talk has been brought to you by Scotiabank. Respecting your past, trusting your future. Think what we can achieve together.